Welcome to today's podcast, sponsored by Hauser's Dover Apothecary, hausershealthcare.com. Dave Scott, Hub Media with Barb. How are you, Barb?
I'm awesome, Dave. How are you?
Very good. I hope you had a wonderful fall, watched all the leaves turn color and then hit the ground. But I shouldn't be like so negative about that. I really, fall is probably my favorite time of year. I got to admit it. That 2 or 3 weeks, it's just brilliant, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's most definitely my favorite season, that and spring, but there is something,
It's magical,
the colors, even
vibrant.
when they drop from the tree, the way they skirt the tree and just the whole continuum, understanding, why do they change colors? And yeah, it's quite magical to me.
Me too. And it seems like every morning you get up and you go out, it's a different color. Like everything's just
Mhm.
changing so rapidly. And I kind of, kind of segueing into our show today, but I mean, then all of a sudden it's just gone. It's
Yeah.
just gone. It's
Yep.
just, and you're like, oh, it wasn't long enough. I really enjoy it. When's spring coming? Right? Sort of
Yeah.
those
Yeah,
November.
that can happen.
Yeah, and you can almost feel the coldness right when the leaves drop, and
Yeah.
it gets a little dreary, doesn't it? And that's what we're going to
Get
talk about today.
bittersweet and melancholy.
Yes.
The state of mind. I mean, um, why I love having dogs so much is they make you get up, get dressed, and get out there. Doesn't matter what the weather is. With having Brewski the pup, and around the 8-month mark, the leaves are pretty exciting on the ground.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
he's tweaked our backs more than once as he dives for them because he finds them irresistible. And, my mom's 83. One of her favorite things is to still jump in a pile of leaves. And I'm like, that's fantastic,
Yeah.
right? Like that taking something in seasons of change and finding a way to enjoy them is, you know, as November and the light is decreasing, for many people that is a huge mood deflator for them. And that's what we're talking about today, is that dull, dreary, and depressed
Yeah.
that can really sink in if we're not finding patterns and habits and ways to make our days brighter. And you probably see a lot of people become really inactive, which is another thing that doesn't help our brains.
And yeah, that's exactly what we were trying to lead us to, the seasons and mood living in 3D, for this month's column
Mhm.
in the hub for the November edition. And when I
Yeah.
read your article today, it was like, yeah, man, you so see it with folks, right? As the fall weather changes, and that I think you mentioned from like November to February, it can be really hard for folks. But explain this to me then. What does D3, the vitamin D, what does that do? Like, does that,
All
I know
right.
vitamin C does, but what does vitamin D do?
hmm Okay. So vitamin D is a vitamin that actually acts very much like a hormone in our body. And it is a very critical part, not just of our bone health, because a lot of people correlate, well, I take it to keep my bones strong and healthy, but it is a huge support to the mood. It is also very, very protective as far as autoimmune conditions, very specific forms of cancer, such as colon, breast, ovarian, even prostate, right? That's the male equivalent
Yeah.
of ovarian. And so, if we have deficient levels of D in our bodies, then if there's a genetic component or other environmental factors or lifestyle factors that are more likely to stimulate those things in our body, then that deficiency of vitamin D alone can be a problem. So, geographically, we live in an area where we only get the sun's rays for 6 months out of the year that enable our bodies to produce vitamin D themselves.
Okay.
That being said, the sun's rays are optimal for that stimulation of production between 10 and 2. When are we told to stay out of the sun? We're
Good
wearing
point.
sunglasses. We're wearing either shielding clothes or sunscreens or staying, in filtered sunlight, that sort of thing. And basically, you want uncovered for just a few minutes from your forehead to your knees. It about
Absorbs it.
70% of body exposure. And unless you're a teenager, you're probably not doing that anymore.
No.
So, and what that influences is on a daily basis with the right sun exposure, you can produce 20,000 international units of vitamin D. So
Really?
if people are
Holy
thinking
smokes.
that, hey, I'm just going to take this one vitamin D and I'm good. Well, then what about the 6 months of the year where you can't produce it at all? Right. So even if you're in the sunlight and you're doing these shielding control measures because you're concerned about, skin damage or damaging your eyesight or things like that, there has to be moderation and balance here because it is such a critical supplement. In my practice and at Hausers, we carry brands that are quality brands that are effective products. You want your vitamin D to be fat in a fat emulsified base kind of thing. So either a soft gel or the drops that are in the oil. Those dry tablets, they don't absorb because again,
Oh,
it's fat soluble. And, then there are other circumstances where if people have any form of inflammation in the intestinal tract, specifically the lower intestines, that's where our fat soluble vitamins are absorbed. So if that mechanism is interfered, even if they're taking a good dose of it, then they may not be able to utilize it. So there are many, you know, factors that it's influencing. But whenever somebody has that um, sort of trend to start to get very low mood between November and February, we always suspect that there's probably a deficiency in that specific vitamin and possibly some other ones too. But I do encourage people, whenever possible, to get a test requisition from their primary care provider to find out what those levels are. And that is something that we have to advocate for ourselves for because typically that's not covered unless we have osteoporosis and a few other different conditions. So the rest of us, it's a pay out of pocket and request that your doctor does send that in on the requisition. And it's maybe $50, but it's not a test that you have to have every year. Once you know what
okay.
your baseline is, then you know. And I'm telling you, in the 35 years that I've been doing what I've been doing, I've only met two people that have had a healthy level of D in their systems. Okay. That were
Yeah. That
just
tells you.
within
Yeah.
range or mid range, not even, so yeah, it's a thing.
Is there two questions? Um, is there healthy foods you can take that contain lots of vitamin D that you need?
Okay. There are some food sources, your fatty fishes like salmon, mackerel, sardines. Those do contain natural vitamin D. Egg yolks are another
Okay.
source of D. There are a lot of fortified foods on the market where they have had D added to them, but as a rule, that's a synthetic form. And anytime a vitamin is synthetic, half of its potency
Is
is used
lost.
up by the body converting into something that it recognizes. So if people are simply relying on their, milks or their, plant-based milks or their orange juice or whatever that says it has vitamin D, it's still not going to be enough. So that supplementing, if you have a senior in a nursing home, whether you have a child starting school or preschool, the immune system needs that extra vitamin D. And so it's a great tool for helping keep our immune systems up and running optimally as well. Yeah, so food sources, yes, there are a few. Can you eat enough to get enough? No, you can't.
Um, you said about the light, obviously absorbing that vitamin D, but when you take a pill form, is there such a thing? I know that this happens with folks. It happened to me with B vitamin. My body couldn't absorb it. So
Yeah.
is there other ways you can get this? Like, what happens if you're not, you're taking your supplements, but it's not working? Like you said, you got to
Mhm.
get tested to make sure. And maybe
Yeah.
does that happen with vitamin D? Does some folks' bodies not absorb it?
Absolutely. And there are
Wow.
some people that should not supplement with it as well. There are certain types of liver diseases
Okay.
because it is stored in the liver. All of your fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, K, those are stored in the body. And for good reason, is because there are limited times where the body can access those. But yes, oftentimes, if somebody has a liver condition, there may even be when people are going through different cancer treatments, the oncologist may have very specific directives about what they shouldn't take as far as their supplements. Different autoimmune conditions where they're suppressing the immune system temporarily, so it's always a conversation to have at least with your pharmacist or with your doctor or with your specialist or with your naturopath, whomever it is, to make sure that you're taking the right supplement. And if it is an absorption problem for the person, so if they have inflammatory bowel disease or irritable bowel disease, then of course we need to address that. It's the D is not going to be their only problem.
Right.
So it's addressing that condition, regulating that bowel function, improving their overall absorption. So, the D will be kind of the least of their problems if they don't correct that over time.
What are the signs and symptoms that you don't have enough vitamin D? Is there something you can do as sort of your own little health check?
It will be different for every person. When it comes to bone health, often people have no idea until they have a fall and they end up with an unprecedented fracture or break.
Ah,
And especially when it's a simple fall, so knowing if you have a family history of um, bone
deficiencies.
issues
Yeah.
is a starting point. Um, Oh gosh, when it comes to the mood, for certain,
Yeah,
if you're
that's yeah,
noticing that,
that's a good one.
that's uh, and then any time that you know that your immune system is starting to not respond the way you need it to,
Gotcha.
if you're not recovering from things or you're coming down with everything, then those are the times that we, need to look at the vitamin D or a variety of other, supplements that may be of the ones I call the insurance policy ones, your B complexes, your D3, your omegas, and of course your probiotics as a starting point. But yeah, one of the things we can do is change the type of lighting that we have in our homes. So we have the full spectrum lighting in the main living areas. As gorgeous as the back windows are of the house, they're facing east. So by early afternoon,
Yeah.
we're not getting a lot of light coming into the house naturally. The lighting that they have now doesn't gobble up energy the same way. So you can get that full spectrum lighting without, the energy bill going up on you because everybody's being mindful of that. It can still be soft light in the bedroom. That should be calming. There can be areas
Okay.
where a softer, dimmer light is just a good thing, but the living areas should be bright light. And if somebody does have a risk of falls or bone health issues, watching mats on the floor and that, to prevent those fall risks, that's a really huge thing. But yeah, there are they call them daylights that people can sit in front of, And generally, that's a maximum 20 minutes because using it for more than 20 minutes a day can actually increase irritability.
Ah,
So
there you go.
maybe something too that maybe your family members notice that somebody in the household is becoming grumpy and apathetic and just doesn't have the same attitude towards life. And if you've ruled out other factors, then that's definitely something to investigate is whether they need to supplement. There are forms of vitamin D3 there in drops.
Oh,
So when it comes to absorption, those drops can be put right under the tongue and you hold them there for a good solid minute. And that's what's called sublingual. And sublingual supplementation enables it to go right into the bloodstream, and that can bypass a lot of the intestinal absorption issues. So
wow.
that's a good way for people to do it if they do have gastro or bowel related problems.
You always amaze me. I learn so much when we do these, and that's just, folks. We're just talking about vitamin D here, and
Mhm.
how the effect it can be on your body, and how important it is. And it's Barb from Healthy, Well, and Wise. Um, how do people get a hold of you, Barb?
So best way probably is call or text 519
Yeah,
410 3544.
there you go.
Email is barb at healthywellandwise.ca and can also check out the website, which is healthywellandwise.ca.
I know you're extremely busy. Are you still taking new clients?
I am still taking new clients. It is by appointment, but yes, that's a go.
It's folks. It's a great idea to, if you have someone in your family. This is a great time to get in touch with Barb. And like we talked about, the weather is changing, moods are changing, people are changing. Get in. Barb will do. You'll do basically you do like a full report on everything to start, correct?
We do.
And
Hmm.
then you can find out what areas you need to work on or how Barb can help you. Thanks for doing this today. Take care. Look forward to our December show.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you for watching today. Our podcast was brought to you by Hauser's Dover Apothecary, hauserhealthcare.com.